Tropical Storm Fung Wong has yet to make landfall in Taiwan, but has brought flooding to a part of the country still recovering from the last typhoon. Former President Tsai Ing-wen makes the case for Taiwan in Germany, part of a push for closer European ties.
In Europe, as in Asia, the authoritarian toolkit is very similar. Much of the destabilizing tactics Taiwan has faced in recent years tend to find their way to Europe eventually.
Japan's new prime minister sticks to her guns after threatening remarks by a Chinese diplomat. Plus, an indigenous artist revives traditional tattooing techniques. A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Leslie Liao. A land warning has been issued for Tropical Storm Fung Wong as it approaches Taiwan, but it's brought destruction to parts of the country already. Tiffany Wong reports.
Floodwaters from the Mataian River once again surged through the streets of Guangfu in eastern Taiwan as Tropical Storm Fung Wong approaches. The storm, which has been downgraded from a typhoon, killed at least 8 people in the Philippines, and officials in Taiwan are taking no risks, evacuating hundreds in the area, which has been hard hit by storms this year. The devastating flood from a barrier lake breach in September killed 19 people here, and residents are on high alert now, with the tragedy still fresh in their minds.
台风天了只要下大雨每个村民都会有那个警戒性，就晚上说睡不着觉这样，能不能把淹设府里面处理好，我们大家才会安心这样。
The rest of the country is on high alert too. Land warnings have been issued for parts of southern Taiwan, where the storm is expected to sweep across the country from the southwest to the northeast. On the east coast, Yilan and Hualien counties have announced a day off to try and keep people indoors. Access to mountainous parts of Taipei and New Taipei City have also been shut down.
整个转向的角度、路径、速度都高度不确定，所以我们一定会密切掌握台风的动态，评估对台北市接下来可能造成风势雨势的冲击。
Weather forecasters say the storm is expected to weaken, but with torrential rain and strong winds, some injuries have already been reported. And with parts of the country still vulnerable to disaster, emergency personnel are at the ready to step in. Klein Wong and Tiffany Wong for TaiwanPlus.
Fung Wong has already brought heavy rain to Hualien, causing the Mataian River to overflow and flood a local village. Footage from Monday night shows floodwater bursting the northern banks and flowing into the Mingli village's streets. All 50-some residents in the area have evacuated to safety. The Mataian overflowed and inundated the Guangfu township on the other side of the river in late September. Although much of Guangfu was cleaned up, Mingli residents say they've been neglected.
低洼是在我们北边，你现在水都往北边，一半的水往我们这边来不及做一些防范的措施嘛。好，那就算了，你还认为你还回答我是什么？绝对安全。
Tropical Storm Fung Wong is expected to make landfall in southwestern Taiwan later this week. Just days after Taiwan's vice president made a historic speech at the EU Parliament, former President Tsai Ing-wen delivered her own address at the Berlin Freedom Conference in Germany. It's part of recent efforts by Taiwan to deepen ties with the region as it faces growing threats from China. Former Taiwan President Tsai Ing-wen speaks on the importance of defending democracy at the inaugural Berlin Freedom Conference.
In Europe, as in Asia, the authoritarian toolkit is very similar. Much of the destabilizing tactics Taiwan has faced in recent years tend to find their way to Europe eventually.
The conference is just one of many events during Berlin Freedom Week, commemorating the fall of the Berlin Wall over 30 years ago. Tsai's address comes as part of a diplomatic double down for Taiwan in the region. Last week, Vice President Bi Kim-hsiao became Taiwan's first ever senior political figure to address the EU Parliament, speaking to a group of lawmakers from the Inter-Parliamentary Alliance on China, a coalition focused on China policy. Both speeches highlight Taiwan's place on the front lines of democracy as Taipei faces threats of invasion and annexation from Beijing.
Peace in the Taiwan Strait is essential to global stability and economic continuity, and international opposition against unilateral changes to the status quo by force cannot be overstated.
Taiwan has been proactively building its resilience on multiple fronts. Particularly, Taiwan has continued to increase its investments in defense.
But Xiao and Tsai's speeches come amid diplomatic difficulties in Europe. Recently, talks between Taiwan and Estonia have stalled over Taipei establishing a representative office in the Baltic nation. Taiwan wants to include the word Taiwan in the office's official name, but Estonia reportedly refuses to approve the name for fear of angering China. Germany in recent weeks has been looking to shore up ties with China. During a phone call between Beijing and Berlin's foreign ministers, China asked Germany to oppose what it called Taiwan independence. Berlin also seemed to downplay Tsai's visit, saying her trip was a private visit and that she wasn't going to meet with any local officials. Even so, this push-pull between Taiwan and China may be part of Europe's more short-term diplomatic strategy. In the long run, Taipei may be the more reliable partner for the EU.
Therefore, it's so important for Taiwan to also engage with Europe in security cooperation to the greatest extent possible, also understanding that there are limitations based on Europe's own one China policy. China is viewed as a partner, but also a competitor and systemic rival.
Europe seems to be playing a balancing act, carefully navigating its ties with both Taiwan and China. Taipei, on the other hand, is going all in on courting its European counterparts. John Su and Leslie Liao for TaiwanPlus. Things are heating up between Japan and China after remarks that Prime Minister Takaichi Sanae made about Taiwan drew a threatening response from a Chinese diplomat. Now Japan is lodging an official complaint. As Alan Liu reports, the incident is part of a trend of aggressive wolf warrior-style diplomacy under Chinese leader Xi Jinping.
Japanese Prime Minister Takaichi Sanae is sticking to her guns, days after saying that any armed Chinese aggression against Taiwan could threaten the survival of her country. Words that prompted a violent response from China's lead diplomat in Osaka, Xie Jian. He wrote on X that if Japan dares to intervene in the Taiwan issue, China would not hesitate to, quote, cut their filthy necks. Japan has lodged a protest, calling the post inappropriate.
Although the purpose is unclear, it must be said that it is extremely inappropriate as an article written by a Chinese diplomatic mission.
Responding to the complaints, China's foreign ministry said Takaichi's statements prodded historic wounds left over from the last time the two countries were at war.
日本当政者妄图介入台海事务，既是对国际正义的践踏，对战后国际秩序的挑衅，也是对中日关系的严重破坏。
Still, Xi's post continues to draw international ire. U.S. Ambassador to Japan George Glass blasted it as a failure to be the good neighbor China often claims to be. And Taiwan's presidential office said it crossed the, quote, bounds of diplomatic etiquette. Other leaders said it was an example of an aggressive Chinese policy, known as wolf warrior diplomacy.
事实上呢，中国的外交人员，这种战狼般的言行举止，实际上是令人大开眼界。 更凸显了他们恣意妄为的霸权心态。
Analysts say Xi's tweets fits into a pattern of so-called wolf warrior diplomacy championed by Chinese President Xi Jinping. The policy encourages diplomats to speak out boldly against perceived enemies, but it has also resulted in worse relations with other countries.
所谓战狼外交，使得中国跟特别是传统这些西方国家的关系谈判中陷入一个蛮大的困境。
So far, China has defended its diplomats, saying Xi was safeguarding the country's claims over Taiwan. But experts say such actions have only further strained its ties with Japan, rather than winning support on the Taiwan issue. For her part, Prime Minister Takaichi has refused to retract her statements on Taiwan, but she did say she'll be more careful moving forward. Joseph Wu and Ellen Liu for TaiwanPlus.
The 2025 Manila Dialogue on the South China Sea wrapped up last Friday. This year, a Taiwanese delegation attended, a sign of growing cooperation on security and maritime issues between Taiwan and the Philippines. The Chinese embassy in the Philippines protested Taiwan's inclusion in the event. Our reporter Larry Isiano spoke to Renado Cruz de Castro, distinguished professor at De La Salle University in Manila, about what this means moving forward.
Last week, Manila hosted the South China Sea Dialogue. In a first, there were Taiwanese participants present at the summit. What do you think this says about growing cooperation between Taiwan and the Philippines?
We have to cooperate primarily because we are confronted with a common security challenge. In the case of the Philippines, we have issue with China over the South China Sea, and more importantly, of course, on the part of the Philippines, it's also a recognition that we also have to protect the Luzon Strait, where, of course, Luzon Strait links Taiwan and the Philippines. And there's a growing recognition here in the Philippines that, of course, if China would be able to achieve its goal of a forceful unification with Taiwan, that will have an impact on the Philippines.
Going back in the last few months or in the last year, what are some other examples of concrete cooperation between both sides?
Well, what has been constant, of course, is the cooperation between the Philippine Coast Guard and, of course, the Republic of China Coast Guard. Probably there are other cooperation happening, but I'm not privy. Whether there's cooperation, of course, between the Armed Forces of the Philippines and the Republic of China Armed Forces. Unfortunately, on the part of the Philippine government, especially in the past, they have basically accepted what China had basically laid on the table. The option of a one China principle rather than a one China policy. The key challenge there is how to effect a security cooperation that will circumvent, of course, or on the part of the Philippines, to recognize the fact that it's not actually implementing a one China policy, rather it's pursuing a one China principle. So the burden is actually on the part of the Philippine government, a recognition. Understand that there's a nuance between a one China principle and a one China policy. That is the responsibility of the Philippines on the side of the Philippines.
How does cooperation between Taiwan and the Philippines fit into broader regional dynamics, either involving Japan, the US, or other concerns about China's actions in the South China Sea or regionally?
But I think there's also a recognition of the fact that there is what they call the notion then that this emerged from the Japanese, the notion of a one theater, that Japan and the Philippines face a common security challenge in the East China Sea and South China Sea. So both sides would need to cooperate. And of course, between Japan and the Philippines is, of course, Taiwan.
That was Professor Renado Cruz de Castro speaking to us from Manila. Taiwan is launching a platform to advance its own AI ecosystem. It's seen as a way to build the country's technological sovereignty or self-sufficiency in the field and remain competitive globally.
你要导入 AI， 通常会遇到很多技术的瓶颈，开发的技术的瓶颈，也会遇到没有算力的资源。那 AI Rap 这个平台，它就是一站式把这些问题通通包裹在我们国网的服务里面。
The AI platform allows businesses and academic institutions to use AI without concerns over data, computing power, or models, while promoting technological sovereignty in areas like language.
让模型输出的语言能够符合台湾人的用语，符合台湾人的习惯。
The Taiwan AI Rap platform will officially launch in December. World leaders are in Brazil as the UN annual climate summit COP30 gets underway. This year marks the 10th anniversary of the Paris Climate Agreement, a landmark treaty to limit global warming. While Taiwan is not a UN member state, a few NGOs and firms from the country are joining as observers. The delegation aims to showcase Taiwan's climate efforts and commitment to meeting the international net zero carbon emissions target. For more on this, our reporter Irene Lin spoke to Chen Huiping, founder of the Taiwan Green Energy for Charity Association, an NGO representing Taiwan at the event.
How does Taiwan participate in COP30 despite not being recognized by the UN Framework Convention of Climate Change, or UFCCC?
台湾在联合国不是缔约方国家，但是我们还是可以透过在 UFCCC 的一个公约底下，其实有可以让这些非利组织用观察员的身份来参与，希望能够以民间的角度去突破我们在外交上面的困局。那我觉得这也是非常重要的，因为气候变迁不会选择国家，它的影响特别针对一些脆弱的小岛国家或是南方国家，其实冲击更大的。
You're leading a delegation of young women to COP30 to emphasize voices and roles of younger generations and women in climate issues. Could you share how women in Taiwan may be more vulnerable to extreme weather events?
像我们现在已经开始关注到在高温调试的议题下面，一些劳工的保护的措施已经开始，但是我们发现可能在台湾，我们的譬如说女性在劳动的职场上，她可能更多是参与在兼职或是就是非正规的劳动力的人力的一些行业，那她可能就会被排除在我们刚刚讲这个安全网之外。女性其实是家里使用能源跟管理能源跟电力使用很重要的一个关键的行动者，所以我们如果要去做任何的改变，其实他们就会是一个关键的一个角色。
Your organization has been helping disadvantaged communities transition to renewable energy by helping them inspecting and installing solar panels. How do you think initiatives like yours can influence climate solutions?
所以我觉得这样的类似的行动跟倡议跟串联，其实是台湾可以寻找的机会。那包含其实在 COP 大家会谈论的就是碳交易的市场的机制跟机会，因为我们知道拯救地球这件事不是只有国家要做，也不是只是交 NDC 3.0 就结束了。其实怎么要把它落实，我想这是今年 COP30 非常重要的一个关键。那未来这些非国家的行动者的角色也会越来越重要。
That was Chen Huiping, founder of the Taiwan Green Energy for Charity Association. Climate change and urbanization are taking a toll in Bangladesh, where river islands are washing away at a growing rate. The trend has left residents facing an uncertain future. John Van Trieste has more.
On an island in the Brahmaputra River in Bangladesh, people are busy moving a house onto a barge to take it to safer ground. The river creates islands like this one, called chars, from the sediment it carries all the time. But in time, it also washes them away. People in this part of the world know when it's time to move on. For hundreds of families in northern Bangladesh, it's a way of life, and a hard one. For each move, displaced people must make new arrangements with the landowners of newly formed chars. 50-year-old Nurun Nabi can remember moving 31 times in his lifetime. Now it's time to pack up and ship off again.
Relocating homesteads has become our additional profession. We inherited it as locals of the River Island region. We often relocate 2 or 3 times a year. Sometimes we get lucky and we can live in one place up to a year. This fate has been following us since long before the British colonial period.
But these moves are becoming more frequent as climate change makes the river less predictable. Some islanders have adapted with some success. On this char, sand-filled sacks called geobags have helped firm up the delicate shoreline. It's given residents enough stability to set up a volunteer-run primary school. But the river is unforgiving, and spots where there aren't yet geobags in place are crumbling, threatening the school and more.
I sincerely hope we'll get more geobags to stop the erosion around the char. Then we can dream of staying here permanently, or at least for a few more years. Then we can concentrate on teaching our children. If this char washes away, the school will be gone. Their education will be ruined again.
In the capital, Dhaka, it's clear to climate analyst Malik Fida A. Khan what's happening in the river country, a combination of a shifting climate and the growth of cities.
So if there is a change in the rainfall, or if there is a change in the pattern of the flow, so definitely that will be impacting the riverbank erosion and aggression. The second point of the climate change is the urbanization. If there is a urbanization in the upstream part of the Jamuna River, so what happened? Then the quantum of the sediment, the flow will also increase.
Some island residents hope the government will create a special ministry to handle their difficulties. But at least one government official says there's no plan to do that, leaving residents of the shifting islands to their own devices as their situation becomes more urgent. James Lin and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
An indigenous tattoo artist is reviving an ancient technique, one that was once forbidden in Taiwan. To celebrate its return, traditional tattoo artists from across the Pacific have gathered in Taitung to share cultural ties and reconnect with their roots. Our reporter Sadie Chi was there.
Tudri Pachires, a member of Taiwan's indigenous Paiwan community, has been practicing traditional hand-tapping tattoo techniques for about a decade. He is the last artist in the country keeping this art form alive. This technique uses a chisel and striking stick to hammer ink into the skin. It disappeared during the Japanese colonial era after being stigmatized. The Japanese Empire declared that the tattoos were not beautiful. Originally a machine tattoo artist, Tudri's journey to hand-tap tattooing began after attending an international tattoo convention in New Zealand.
第一次跟太平洋传统纹身做接触的时候，我才看到什么叫拍刺。我看到他们现场在做拍刺的时候，才让我想到，这个在我们台湾的纹身，传统纹身也是这种方式。然后当时就很认真的去观看、去学习，然后再来回到台湾，我就开始去揣摩、去模仿，然后工具的制作、拍刺的技术，慢慢的才有现在这样。
Rediscovering this tradition and owning the necessary skills took 2 to 3 years.
你从拍刺的技术也是需要慢慢的学，到最后需要个6年7年的时间，到最后才能在这边真正的去展现你的技术。
To celebrate the revival of this ancient tradition in Taiwan, artists from across the Pacific, including Hawaii, the Philippines, and New Zealand, were invited to the Tattoo Waves Festival on Taiwan's east coast. These Austronesian communities share cultural roots with indigenous people in Taiwan, including body art traditions.
一方面是庆祝台湾的原住民族、台湾的南岛语族重新找回了失去100多年的这个祖先的留下来的知识跟技术，还有信仰。另外一方面也是感谢这个当年，谢谢他们还保留了这样的一个知识跟技术，让台湾可以重新再从我们这些太平洋的南岛民族里面再重新学回来。
With the event in its second year, huge crowds from Taiwan and other countries gathered at the festival to witness the once forbidden art being openly practiced again.
So many of us within the Pacific look to Taiwan as one of the homelands, as through the Austronesian lineage and practice and culture. And we keep on going back into our history. There's no one homeland that we all come from. So we honor all of the connections that we have with the Pacific, and Taiwan is definitely one of those places that we want to maintain stronger relationships well into the future.
The highlight of the event was the Awa ceremony, where the tattooists and recipients received blessings before the work began.
Awa is very significant because it is a kinolo, a body form of the god Kane. And for us, the tattoo god is Kane Hikili, so it was another form of Kane. And by doing the Awa ceremony before we do the tattoos, it's invoking Kane to be present, to guide our hands towards doing good work.
For the tattooists at the festival, it's an important opportunity to share and exchange cultural traditions.
I think for me, it's like a meeting together from the different country, different tribe. and tattoos. Tattoo, you know, like a tattoo, how they do, and the pattern. Yeah, it's good to see.
This event is not only meaningful for the artists, but also for the people who are receiving the tattoos, especially Alibuso Makakalen, who is a descendant of an indigenous shaman. When she was getting inked, she says it felt like reconnecting with her ancestors.
很感动，我觉得有一种回家的感觉。我想要慢慢，就是把我未完成的事情，就是在文化上我还没学会的东西，就是归零，重新开始，这样子，就代表说，我不要忘记我自己是谁，我也不要忘记我的族人是谁，我生在哪，我死在哪。
As the rhythm of hand tapping once again echoes across the Pacific, artists like Tuzri are not just reviving an ancient craft, they're also reconnecting with the Austronesian spirit and bringing the tradition home. Luffy Lee and Takaichi for TaiwanPlus.
A controversial baseball team supposedly taking part in a new Chinese league does not actually exist. That's according to the Baseball Federation of Asia. Recent reports said the league would include a team called the Shanghai Brothers, whose logo is very similar to the one used by Taiwan's CTBC Brothers. The news caused a stir among fans and accusations of plagiarism. The federation cited the Chinese league as saying there is no team named the Shanghai Brothers. It says it's not responsible for the reports about the rumored team. Thank you for watching TaiwanPlus News. Finally, we end with more images of the effects of Fung Wong on Taiwan. I'm Leslie Liao. Take care and see you next time.